Hey KBC Youth, welcome to our segment dedicated this fall, which is Stories Matter. This semester we're going to be exploring the stories of church members here at KBC and how their stories can inspire and help us connect with others in the world. And today I'm very excited to introduce to you Tara Crane. Now, I'm sure you've all have met Tara Crane at some point. I know for some of the sixth graders, maybe you haven't yet in person. But Tara has been a part of the youth group for a long time and very excited to interview her today. Tara has been a member of our church for about 10 years. She's been a dedicated volunteer and leader in the youth group and has served as deacon of our church and is currently an assistant federal public defender for the Eastern District of Missouri. So Tara, thank you so much for being willing to talk with us today.
Hi guys, how are you today?
So our youth already know you, Tara, but maybe some of them don't know how you became a member here at the church. So what brought you to KBC over 10 years ago?
So I moved to St. Louis in 2003 and started I worked at the time with the state public defender system, and I lived with my sister. And I think at the time I started coming to KBC, I was having a really hard time in my life. And my mom always would tell me, find a church, find a place, a community to help you out. So me and my sister kind of went on a journey to find a church. And we tried a lot of different places, a lot of different kinds of churches. I found KBC over the internet and we decided to try it out. And just when I got there, Scott Stearman was the pastor at the time, and it just seemed like what he was preaching on was what I needed to hear. So I left, and me and my sister talked about how we liked the church. It reminded us of our home church that we grew up in, and I just felt like I had made a connection there, so I kept coming back.
And so you have one sister, is that correct?
I have one sister and one older brother who lives in Maryland, but my sister Crystal comes to church every once in a while, and she lives here in St. Louis, yes.
That's awesome. One of the questions I always ask at the beginning is what role religion played in your childhood growing up. So could you share with us a little bit what role religion played in your childhood?
So I grew up going to church. My parents, I remember when I was a little girl, my dad would have, for his Sunday school class, he would have kitchen duty. And so he would have to go pick up the donuts from Mellow Cream, which was the local donut place in Springfield, Illinois, where I grew up. And so we would get to go to church and we would get to have a donut and a carton of milk. And I know that's not supposed to be what you remember growing up, but as a little kid, that was always an exciting treat to do on a Sunday.
Yeah.
But I did a lot of music. I was in, children's choir. Mm-hmm. I continued with music growing up. I did youth group. I have a lot of great memories. I still am friends with people that I met in church growing up. And even when I would go back at holidays, I really liked seeing a lot of the people that I grew up and seeing them have their own families and see their parents. And I'm friends with some of their parents on Facebook too. So it was just a good place to grow up. I did, ski trips and retreats and mission projects with the youth group. So that was a big part of my life. And in fact, my one of my best friends from high school, her dad was actually our music youth minister. So I spent a lot of time at their house as well.
Wow.
When I went to college, I kind of didn't really, it's not that I didn't believe in God. It just kind of didn't really find a church that I really liked. Mm-hmm. So I kind of got away from it. But I think during law school and other parts of my life, when I first started out as a public defender, I looked for churches. I just didn't find a place that I felt like home. I think it's just because I enjoyed my church growing up so much that it's hard to find a place that's not the same, but close enough that gives you that same feeling of comfort and safety and pushing you to grow and learn and that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, especially that move to college, finding a place where you feel comfortable and accepted, and it's not always the easiest thing to do. So yeah.
No, it's not. But I also think you gotta find your own path, and I think not having it for certain parts, for that portion of my life, there was other times in my life that made me realize that was something that was missing, that was important to me, that maybe I didn't realize that the importance of it. And so I found my way back to it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned, or I mentioned earlier in the intro, that you're a federal public defender. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that means? What do you do in your job? And why did you decide to become a federal public defender?
Okay. So that's, my job has a lot of different roles. I guess I'll start off, I can give you some of the history of it, but essentially what I do is I am appointed by the court to represent people who cannot afford to hire their own attorney that are charged with a criminal offense.
Okay.
So they are the defendants in a court case. There is a case that happened a little over 50 years ago. It's called Gideon versus Wainwright. And under the Constitution of the United States, you have a right to have an attorney represent you in criminal proceedings. And what Gideon is about is that gentleman who was from Florida was charged with a burglary, and he was too poor to hire his own attorney. And so he asked the court to appoint him an attorney to represent him, and they said no. And so he was convicted, he went to prison, and he litigated that issue up to the Supreme Court on his own, which is extremely impressive in my opinion, and said that every individual should have the right to an attorney. And the Supreme Court agreed with him, and that started the basis basically for court-appointed attorneys to represent individuals charged with crimes, that it's that important in the Constitution, and everyone should be entitled to that. So now as a federal defender, I used to work in state court doing this, but now as a federal defender, I represent people charged in federal court. Okay. So those are going to be people that have violated some kind of United States code, which is essentially our statutes, our laws that govern federal court. I can get a case, and I don't get to pick my cases. I just get assigned to them by my boss. So I will meet a client, and I try to find out as much as I can about my clients, because I was so excited about doing stories this fall, because every person has a story. When somebody's charged with a crime, I think a lot of people think it's black and white. But what I do is peel back the layers and try to figure out why my client is in the position that they're in. What has happened in their childhood, what has happened to them prior to the offense at the time, to try to get a better understanding of how to either present a defense on their behalf, or if they want to take some kind of deal, show the judge who they are as a person. And I think that sometimes we forget that people that make wrong choices are still human beings, and they still deserve to be treated as such. And so that's part of my job, is to show what person they are, and what obstacles they've had to go through, and what successes they've had, and what obstacles they may still have to face. So there can be a lot of different things that we have to cover. It can be physical health issues. It could be if they have mental health issues, if they have substance abuse issues. It's, trying to put them in the best position possible, that when they are done serving the consequence of their choice, that they're able to move forward and still be a productive member of the community.
Do you, since you represent people that have been indicted, I guess, is that the right word, indicted, or have been, they're in the process of determining whether or not they're guilty of the crime, you're representing the person on trial, which is interesting because I don't know. Some people would be like, "Well, you represent the bad guy," you know?
Right. Right.
Like, what do you say to that?
My job is not to judge. It is to let a judge or a jury decide that. I think it was Brian Stevenson, who is this incredible attorney who started the Equal Justice Initiative down in Alabama. And he said, no one wants to be known as the worst choice they've ever made. And I think that that's really important because we all make bad choices at some point in our life, do things that we're not always proud of. And it doesn't have to be to the degree maybe that of some of the things that I've seen in my career, but I would want someone to show me grace and compassion. And a lot of times with my cases, a lot of them don't go to trial. Many are worked out in plea agreements. But I'm also here to make sure that what they're pleading to, the facts show that. Maybe it's overcharged and just for example, like possession with intent to distribute. Maybe we're just saying he had possession of drugs, but he wasn't distributing them to anybody else. Like to make sure that evidence there is there to convict them under the law of that higher penalty. So it can be a variety of things. It's not necessarily always me getting up there and saying that this person didn't do anything wrong. It's maybe they did something wrong, but let's convict them of the right thing under the law. So there's a lot of different aspects to it. But I go back to what I said before, which is we're all human beings. We all deserve to be treated as such.
Yeah, and I was wondering, answering that question or saying that, like, we all are meant to be treated as such. Is that something that comes from part of your faith as a Christian?
I would definitely say that the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And it's funny because my dad used to, whenever I would come back from fresh out of law school, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about how I was changing the world, my dad would, say things, like, look at this criminal, he got off on a technicality, and we would have these conversations about how the Constitution is not a technicality. But I would always say to him, if it was me or my sister or my brother, you would want that attorney to do the same thing. And he always said yes,
Yeah.
I think that that's, for every client I've ever had in my 20 years that I've been doing this work, I can always find a good thing about them. I've never had a client that I haven't found some redeeming quality about them. Some have been difficult. Some we've not had good relationship, but they still had somebody that loved them.
Yeah.
So I think that that's important to remember. And I think over the years, my definition of what is a bad guy has changed a little bit too. I think when I started off doing this work, I wanted to be a prosecutor because I grew up in a conservative home. You follow the rules, you do certain things. And I did an internship with the public defender office, and it was not that simple. And it opened my eyes to it, and I saw more humanity in it. And so I really got a passion for it, and I really like what I do, and I really like helping people.
I think that's awesome, and something really beautiful to treat people in that way, regardless of where you meet them. So that's really cool. One of the other big things that you're involved with is you've been a crucial leader and mentor in the youth group for about 6 years now. And I just wanted us to talk just a little bit about why you decided to be a part of leading and mentoring in the youth group, and why that's been so important to be a part of your life. We were talking earlier, and you mentioned that you've had special moments with especially Emma be about, and I was just hoping that you could talk a little bit more about why you decided to start participating with the youth group and leading in that way, and kind of elaborate a little bit more on that.
Okay. So The youth group has been very important to me. I think when I started off, it was, I don't know if I think God has a way of kind of figuring out what you need and kind of leading you in certain paths. And I think that part of my job, there's a thing, it's called compassion fatigue. And so I see all the bad things that people do to one another in society. And I wanted to see the good things, the hope for the future, those types of things. And so I found when I started working with the youth, they taught me a lot of things that I probably needed to hear at the time. And I find the amount of pressure and stress that these kids have with school and their activities and getting into colleges, I'm just amazed by their resilience to do everything that they do. And I love listening to them talk about the things that they enjoy to do, and building those relationships, and hopefully be there if they need to talk to somebody, and I can help them in some way. I would love to do that. I like when, whether it's getting a hug from Bennett Toth, or at Fall Retreat talking with Hunter and Aiden about gun control, or listening to Emma when she would talk about all of her school science stuff that she would do that I was like, I am nowhere near as smart as this brilliant young person. It has helped me have hope for the future, and to see them be kind to one another and stick up for one another and hear their stories. It's meant a lot to me. Probably they don't know that as much, but it does mean a lot to me to be able to participate in a small aspect of their lives. Emma, I developed a really great relationship with her through generation to generation, and we still meet up and we still talk. And I just texted with her the other day, and she was able to, when I had my ordination service for being a deacon at KBC, she participated in the service by reading some Bible verses, which is really, really meaningful to me. And I've told her that a million times, but I adore her, and we've got a very good friendship that I'm sure will last no matter where she goes in the world and what she does. But I don't have any kids, and I'm not going to have any kids, but I consider KBC's youth my kids that I'm hopefully helping in some way get to the next level.
Well, finally, I've asked everyone that we interview if there's any special takeaway or something that you want to leave the youth with about your story. So is there something that you'd like to, like a final takeaway to share with the youth about your story?
I would just say, I truly believe that we all have our own journeys, and it's okay to have struggles and questions and about your faith and about other things in the world, and just keep asking those questions, because you'll find your way. And I think you also have to open your ears and your heart and listen, because God is there with you, and sometimes you're not expecting it, but when you need it, he will be answering those questions for you and guiding you. And so just keep an open mind about it, and ask those questions, and you'll find your way. So that would be probably what I would say.
That's great. Well, Tara, I can't thank you enough, one, for sharing your story, two, for being an awesome and amazing youth leader that I get to work with often. And three, just for sharing your story with us. It's truly been a pleasure.
It's really, I think these stories have been really great for us to learn more about other members at KBC. I've learned a lot of stuff that I didn't know, so I've enjoyed them just as much as I hope the youth have.